Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. Welcome. I'm beginning a new series here. It's called Art of the Mimbar, and it is basically about what it's like to be an imam. There was recently a video that went viral on Facebook, a poll of how much imams make or how much imams should be paid their salaries, and talking about the responsibilities of the imam. And even before that, Imam Omar Suleiman, he wrote an article about all the different responsibilities of an imam. And before that, there's always been talk among imams about their position and the responsibilities involved. And I myself had, before I became an imam, I had written a list of about 50 or 60 questions that I wanted to interview other imams about. And, questions from, from the mundane, like how do you prepare a khutbah, to even questions like have you ever received death threats, or how do you feel about interfaith dialogue, things like that. So, inshallah ta'ala, those will be a lot of the topics that I will cover, inshallah, not about death threats, or hopefully not, we'll see, but topics that I'll cover in this series. But I wanted to actually begin this series with a very important topic, which is why did Imam Chris Karras decide to become an imam? And so that's actually kind of fascinating, for me at least. And so I'll begin with this slideshow here. First of all, going back, why did I decide to become an imam? Do I see it as a permanent career? How did I get my first job? Where do I see myself in 5 years? First of all, to answer the last question first, I see myself remaining and being as an imam in 5 years from now, inshallah ta'ala. It's 2021 right now, January 2021. When it's January 2026, I see myself still being an imam. And actually, I see myself still in this chair and in this city and with the position that I have. Alhamdulillah. I plan on growing with this, inshallah ta'ala. And just going to my story a little bit. First of all, when I attended Knox College and studied there, this was in 2003. That's when I graduated high school. So I started in 2003. My major was political science. And at first, I took some poli-sci classes, and then I realized I absolutely hated politics. And then I decided, well, instead of politics, I'll study something else. Maybe because I have to admit, even in grade school, I was kind of into math and science, but then in high school, I had enough, and so my thoughts kind of migrated a little bit. Most of my electives were actually in art related stuff, like art critique, art history. I wasn't actually doing artwork, but I had a photography class, but just stuff related to that, I guess more like easy things in the humanities. And so instead of political science, I gravitated towards cultural studies, but I didn't take any classes in that subject yet. And at the end of my first year, one of the imam at Knox College, he said, well, I'm graduating now and moving on to a different university, and only one person showed up every single Friday, and only one person is making their schedule available next year on Fridays, so that happens to be you, Chris. So you have to be the imam next year for Knox College. and actually it's not just Knox College, but all of Galesburg, Illinois. And so I was like, nope, that's not me. I don't really know anything about Islam. I had only converted to Islam 3 years before that, or 2.5 years, really. And since then, I had not really learned that much about the faith of Islam to begin with. And so then suggested, well, I mean, the only other alternative is so-and-so, but I don't think they're interested in it. And I thought, well, yeah, well, I know that so-and-so too, and last time I met him, he wanted to show me how to roll a marijuana joint or something. So I don't think I'd want to pray behind him anyway. So I reluctantly accepted the position, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came to my aid, alhamdulillah. Some brothers gave me some books about the fiqh of the Friday prayer, and a book of sample sermons from Jamal Zaragoza. It's a 3-book series. It's really wonderful, mashallah, tabarakallah. And also just reading lots of other material. And so reading and learning about Islam, it became an addiction. I had become a Muslim a while beforehand, but things just didn't really click beyond the initial catalyst to bring me to Islam. Nothing beyond that. Beyond that point, I mean, it was difficult to learn more about the faith, I guess. And however, just reading a lot, that's what really helped to develop things more, alhamdulillah. And so with that, and starting the next year, my second year at Knox College, that's when I had, as the imam, I wasn't really thinking that this was going to be my permanent career or anything like that. But there were, I guess, the responsibility of it, and, for example, even receiving some criticism for some of the things that I had said as the imam, and as part of the khutbahs, for example. Like, I remember one khutbah mentioned from the book about like smoking, and like, for example, another khutbah mentioned about, like, about the etiquettes of the Friday prayer, or not playing with your hands and stuff. And so people, a couple times, some of the brothers, some of the students, they came to me afterwards and said, did you, where are these khutbahs coming from? And I'm saying, I'm just reading from the book. And it got me to actually do a bit more research and to defend those positions, and to see and doing this and being in a position of teaching other Muslims made me realize also how ignorant that many Muslims, or most Muslims, were about their religion. And I was put in this position. I loved learning, and I was made into a teacher just by essentially being forced into this position. And so, well, I don't like that the Muslims are ignorant of their own religion. But here I am, and here's the book. I have the opportunity to bring them out of that ignorance. And so that's what I really loved about that position, and reading more about Islam. And I remember specifically reading in Sahih al-Bukhari, or the Mukhtasar Sahih al-Bukhari, the abridged, summarized version of Sahih al-Bukhari, and reading in the Book of Knowledge, and seeing of the signs of the Day of Judgment, that knowledge would be removed, and ignorance would spread, for example, and seeing that this is what I see all around me, and also the spread of intoxicants and the spread of fornication, for example, and senseless killing. This is what I see all around me, and I feel like there's an absence of scholars out there. Maybe that's something that I can aspire to be and aspire to become, and to, because there's a need for that. And when I was in Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, there was no other imam in that city. There were Muslims that lived there. I remember, a couple Muslims that ran a gas station, another that ran a hotel, a couple doctors here or there, but there wasn't a masjid. And so the Islamic club and our Jumas and the room that we rented out, that served as a masjid for simply 1 hour a week. It was simple as that. And so in that environment, it's like, well, that's me, and this is something that I love to do. Well, I'll just seize that opportunity, and so then that's when I decided, well, this is what I want to do. This is my calling. And I wrote to my parents and talked to them about that. This is what I want to do. So eventually I left Knox College and ultimately, of course, I studied Islam. Alhamdulillah, in Medina, 6 years from 2007 to 2013, and then Malaysia, 2014 to 2016, where I did my master's. Alhamdulillah. But one thing about being imam or choosing that path, and interesting. I mean, I don't know how it is for other imams, why they choose to become one, but for me, I mean, it really felt like it was a calling. And I even remember that specific moment of reading Mukhtasar Sahih Bukhari, where it was like, this is what I have to do the rest of my life. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. It was just like a surreal moment. But I don't know how it is for everyone else, but that's how it was for me. And coincidentally, I mean, I know like a lot of Christian ministers, they talk about a calling and the moment that they feel like they were called to preach and become a minister. But now in Medina had a decent network of American students, and every so often, and of course we were students, and the talk among students was that you really should not become an imam, because you will be at the phrase that was always used was at the mercy of the people's sadaqah, and so you are, you get paid in sadaqah, and of course that's obviously not the best source of income, right? And so that was the general idea. And however, at the same time, when you ask what's the alternative, a lot of them would actually just, what would end up happening is that they would leave teaching the deen altogether. They would go into something else entirely, not deen related. Now, some of them, and a lot of those that actually stayed in da'wah related fields, Allah knows best, I don't think they are making as much financially as they could be making as an imam potentially. And that's, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But, the whole idea that you are at the mercy of the people's sadaqah, sometime I'll talk a little bit more about imam salaries, inshallah ta'ala, but it differs because one slide coming up, I'll talk about that, about misconceptions of being an imam. And so, in Medina also, du'at and imams from the West, especially du'at from the West, they would come to Medina, and sometimes they would meet with us students, and we'd have a sit down, a gathering with that da'iyah, and we're students of knowledge. We carry our books with us, we go to class, we go to the Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi, and sit with the scholars and learn and stuff like that, and we are in our own world learning our own thing. We're busy thinking about mutun and or about tests and ikhtibarat. And then a da'i from America comes over and tells us this is what's going on in the U.S. And, these are the kind of questions that, people are asking me and stuff, and saying that it's really bad out there, and this and that. And then they also say, whatever you do, don't become an imam. That was something that was almost universal. Don't become an imam. Now, some of those that were imams, when they would come over, I remember asking one brother who had been an imam for over a decade, and he said, he was shocked and flabbergasted by that, and spoke highly about how great being an imam was. And I remember also, and one of the imams of my city, Peoria, a past imam there, he was talking about how being an imam was the greatest job in the world. Is he an imam today? I don't think so. He actually, I think, bought a couple chicken restaurants and then went into politics and then into acting and then other fields. Anyway, so and also full-time da'wah as well. But the point being is that there's a lot for people that might be the most qualified to become an imam. There's a lot of pushback from among themselves and from those that have traversed the path before them, telling them not to. Don't do it, essentially. So when I was in Malaysia, there were very, very few American students there. So I was, alhamdulillah, I really felt like I was pretty much to myself, doing my own thing without other influences. And so that was, I didn't hear that at all. And the reason why I went, one of the reasons why I went to Malaysia was just because after I finished at Medina, I did not feel I was ready. I graduated from Kulliyat al-Dawah, and our main studies in that college is Aqidah and also history. But of course, neither of which are, it's the Aqidah studies are well-rounded. The history studies at that time did not even include the Ottoman Empire. It was the Sirah, Khulafa al-Rashidun, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and then modern day history. There was a push from the teachers to include the Ottoman Empire, but it had not been accepted yet by the university. And also they taught the history of the kingdom and the history of Dawah in the kingdom and that sort of thing. But the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, So with that, and we had some classes about fiqh, we had some classes about hadith, some classes about tafsir, but these were all mix and match, and the purpose of those classes were just to teach you a little bit about here's how scholars do things, essentially, and it was not to give me or give us a well-rounded understanding of those topics. And so you have to either study those topics on the side, or that's pretty much it. And most of the time that I was there in Medina, I spent my time studying. I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever, and so I wanted to prepare for when I wasn't going to be there. So I researched a lot in books, and I researched a lot about how to study Islam, essentially by myself when I'm away from the university. And so that's what I prepared myself for, alhamdulillah, and studying a lot of ulum al-ala, the wasa'il, like usul al-fiqh, the Arabic language, this sort of thing, and even a little bit of mantiq and whatnot. So, and then, so considering that, and what I feel like is most required or most desired and needed as an imam, I believed very strongly that I was not ready, even though there's this sense of thought that if you studied in Medina, then you're Sheikh al-Islam or that sort of thing. No, I mean, I used my time in Medina very well, alhamdulillah, but I knew myself, and I knew the needs of the community a little bit, and I knew that I wasn't there. And so that's where Malaysia came in, where I got my master's in fiqh and usul al-fiqh. That's actually what they call it, fiqh and usul al-fiqh. So, even though it's a 2-year degree, I took topics and wrote papers in both topics and some fiqh topics and also usul al-fiqh topics. And, alhamdulillah, I mean, that was extremely beneficial time there. Even though I had studied those topics in Medina, this was, any bachelor's degree and any the difference, or the gulf of difference between what you do in a bachelor's program for Islamic studies and Islamic seminary versus what you do in a master's program is just a huge gulf of difference, and it makes a lot of difference. So when I finished Malaysia, I felt that I was more ready, although I really, at that time, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be an assistant imam somewhere. And however, unfortunately, I only knew of 2 places in the United States that were looking for an assistant imam. This is something that unfortunately is missing in a lot of masajid in America, assistant imam. And so one of those places was in Tennessee, and the other one was in Boston. And by the time that I had applied and finished making up my resume and sent it in, both of them said, we just chose someone. And so that got shot down. And coming from Peoria, Illinois, a small town, even though both the masjids there did not have an imam at the time that I finished Malaysia, I asked, the leadership there, hey, I'm here. Is there anything that you need from me? And they said no, which, is fine. Whatever. Qaddar Allah ma sha'a fa'al. And so, I had sent my resume all throughout all the many different places that were looking for an imam in America. It was rare that I got a call back. I did get a couple callbacks, but it was difficult. It was difficult. The thing is, because no one really knew me. Even when I was in Medina, I was kind of a loner. And the one place that called me back was in Arizona, and they had not. I didn't have any connections with them before. Another place that called me back was in California. And I did have I did have one connection there, a fellow student that had come from that community. But, however, ultimately it never panned out. I never had a second interview, or in some cases even a first interview. I remember when I decided to go to St. Louis, and I became the education director, the Islamic education director of CARE, Missouri. Then that's when things, that's when, and even not being known in St. Louis or other places, that's what really holds you back when you are trying to apply. If you come from a large city to begin with, Peoria, Illinois was not that, but a large city, if you come from a large city that has many masajid and you are qualified, more than likely 1 or 2 of those masjids are empty. I mean, in the sense that they don't have an imam. That's one place that you can start out at. And so when I was in St. Louis, I worked for CARE. I also worked a little bit for the Islamic Information Center. And then one masjid in the city of Belleville, Illinois, they were imamless, and I sent them an offer. I just kind of, just out of the blue, kind of like a cold send, and I said, hey, I am willing to do this and this and this and this for you guys, and be here on these hours, and in exchange, this is what I would like in return for compensation. And, they actually got back to me and had a brief interview and accepted that. And I had been to that place before, that masjid before, on behalf of CARE, when there was an open house, and I just gave a talk, and alhamdulillah, it went very, very well. And so CARE had helped me get introduced to the different masajid of the city. On behalf of CARE, I had given a khutbah in every single masjid. And so with that, or not every single one, but most of them. And so that was very helpful in getting me introduced beforehand, before I could take a position as an imam somewhere. And ultimately, I was an imam for about a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half, in Belleville, Illinois. However, that masjid was very far from where I lived, and also where my other job was as a teacher for an Islamic school. And so I had two jobs, and had very little spare time, very, very, very little spare time. And and it really just kind of like drove me nuts. And my wife was also teaching. Her job was also 7 days a week, include weekends and evenings. We're all working. And so ultimately, the reason why I changed venues and moved to another city where I'm an imam now, full-time imam, is because I just wanted to trade 3-4 jobs for one job. And so that's essentially what I did, alhamdulillah. And that's how I got to be where I am. Now let's talk about some other things about being an imam, and eventually some things about this. In this series, The Art of the Mimbar, I will give different talks about what it actually is like. For example, giving a khutbah and the khutbah prep and things like this, or what's it mean, like, for example, as an imam, doing weddings, doing funerals, visiting the sick, etc., etc., etc. But those things themselves, that's one of the things that I love the most about my position, which is basically the variety. I have a different thing going on every single day. It's not boring at all in that sense. There's just a lot of different things going on. Every day is different. Every day is different, and monotony just drives me nuts. When I was in St. Louis, before I joined up with CARE, I decided to start a coding boot camp. I was part of a free coding boot camp called Launch Code. And, where they actually were going to even, hook me up with a job. And I was learning Python and C# with them. But, ultimately, I felt like the same exact thing that I felt when I was welding. As, because I was a welder once, and I hated the monotony of that. I just couldn't stand it. I could not imagine doing that for years and years and years. Same thing with coding. I could not imagine doing that for years and years and years. It's just the monotony of it. If you like variety, you're leading prayers. You also have an office. You also go out and meet people. Maybe have lunch with someone. You might be doing a wedding here or a funeral in the cemetery. You're doing research. You're answering questions. You're giving a talk for a class. You are giving a tour for a class. You're doing all kinds of different things, or maybe even, counseling someone here or there. It's just non-stop variety. No 2 days are the same. So that's the number, or that's one of the things I love most about being an imam. The second thing is relevance. You're actually making a difference in some ways, or at least you have the opportunity to make a difference. Muslims may get only one chance a week to be reminded and try to ignite that spark plug of their deen, and when you are concerned about that, then it means a lot to you to deliver that message properly. And so so relevance is key. One thing, when I was studying in Medina, I thought a bit about going into academia, and however, I had gotten a late start. I went to Medina when I was 24. By the time I finished, I was 29-ish, and or I started when I was 23, didn't I? So then I was 29 by the time that I finished, and so trying to, and of course that was Medina. By the time I finished Malaysia, I was 31, 32, something like that. I remember, around the year right when I finished Malaysia was right when I was turning 32. And so after that, to do a PhD, which would take 4 to 6 years maybe, even if I could be accepted, and then to try and become a professor after that, it would just take way too long. I'd be like 40 by the time I get where I'm at. And so, here's a career where I already have a head start, or I already have pretty much most of the qualifications that I will need. Other things I can pick up along the way, inshallah ta'ala. And so, and the thing also with academia is, you might be writing lots, and you have to write lots, but who's going to read it? Who's going to read it? I mean, there are academics that are into popular academia. They popularize a subject, which is wonderful. For example, in America, when it comes to Islamic studies, there are, a few, but, however, alhamdulillah, there's always that opportunity, but still, you still have to publish a lot of things that are probably not going to be read by anyone. And also, even a lot of your students are people that are not Muslims, and so while it's great to give the message to them in a in a different way, in an academic way, and in an objective way, but at the same time, I am more pleased and happy with the position of being an imam and doing that, and I find a lot more opportunities as an imam, inshallah ta'ala. But there are some drawbacks. I guess my least favorite part of the job, first of all, is the lack of time. Anything that I want to do, it's many times I'll find myself in my office, and I'll say, for example, like, wow, I just got all my emails done at 3 o'clock, and another 2 or 3 hours until Maghrib prayer, for example, and I have this time I can review Quran now. Alhamdulillah, I can review Quran. Literally, every time I say that, I get a phone call, and there's, some other commitment, some emergency here or there, and so maybe I'll have to go visit someone at the hospital and spend time with them, for example, and or this need or that need, or someone will enter into the masjid, or maybe I'll be walking in the masjid, Assalamu alaikum, and someone responds, Wa alaikum salam, Imam, how you doing? I'm like, okay, what's going on? How are you? You want to talk about it? And so someone will come to my office and they'll talk to me for 2 hours. And so having a lack of time, that's the ability to prepare a good dars is almost gone. And even sometimes the ability to prepare a good khutbah, and do a lot of research, I just don't have it. I just don't have it. It depends on the size of your masjid and the size of your community, the size of your city, that sort of thing. But in my current place, in my current position, I just rarely have time for anything like that. So, and that brings us to the next, drawback, which is personal shortcomings. Personal shortcomings just because I don't have the time to do things better. As the saying goes, pre-planning prevents poor performance, the 5 Ps. And I don't, sometimes I just don't have the opportunity to plan for things in the best manner possible. And so I stumble, I stutter, and it is what it is. But also, I before becoming the imam, this is the position that I've been eased into, so to speak. However, I had stage fright for a long time growing up. I had a real phobia of public speaking. I would have rather been hit by an asteroid than, stand behind a microphone and start speaking. I would, even till today, when I record this video or before I press publish, for example, I feel lots and lots of jitters. Before I give a khutbah, I have to just completely I don't have to, but I have to, empty my bowels and everything. I just get so absolutely nervous before leading salat a lot of times as well. And even when I'm leading salat, I feel like as if my mind just goes completely empty, especially if I'm reciting from Juz Amma. Because I memorized Juz Amma in English, in transliterated words, whereas other parts of the Quran I memorized from the Mus'haf, so those parts are easier to recall. But when I'm reciting from Juz Amma, which is most of the time, it's I feel like my mind goes blank and I'm just reciting from whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts on my mouth, which most of the time, alhamdulillah, is good, or is correct. But other times, I fall short in that. And so that's those are some of the drawbacks, personal shortcomings. And also, I guess, although this is not related to work itself, but in the whole field as an imam, I've never encountered anything face to face, but in my wanderings online, you can definitely see that many Muslims have a negative attitude or negative opinion towards imams, towards scholars, towards Maulanas, Maulvis, all this, that, and the other, and which is just sad to see. And so I feel like we are in a difficult situation, you could say. Misconceptions about being an imam. The main misconception is the salary, and it's it really, and ultimately it just depends on where you are an imam, your responsibilities, and your qualifications, and this and that and the other. There are some imams that get paid a 6-figure salary. That's definitely out there. There are even lots of qualified people that don't know that, and so they end up doing something completely different. But alhamdulillah, that's out there for people. It's not common. This would be in some of the really, really big cities, in big, large suburban masajid. They might be able to command that salary, especially if they have all those qualifications, or if they're Hafidh al-Quran, or if they are a big name, for example. Then that could be expected. But even in a lot of other cities, and for example, a medium-sized city or a medium-sized masjid, you actually, in a larger masajid, you probably have a much greater support network, and you probably have fewer responsibilities. In the medium-sized masajid, and especially in a medium-sized city, then you probably have the most responsibilities, and you have a decent salary, a mid-range salary, between 60 and 80,000 probably. And so, but imams of smaller masajid or part-time imams, then probably around anywhere between 40 to 60,000. And Allah knows best. Allah knows best. But the ranges for salaries, it's variant, and so that's one misconception about being an imam, but I don't believe that it is true unless you're going to average, for example, volunteer imams and also a lot of or for example, even many different part-time folks that only do one or two jobs, for example, or the masjid that's like a house masjid, and what they pay their imam, who's probably got a full-time job elsewhere, for example. So, lastly, and this will be the last thing I'll mention in this video, inshallah ta'ala, is words of advice to those considering becoming imam. First of all, pray about it. Pray about it. The main thing is go where your heart tells you, and not to listen to other people. I remember when I was in Medina, and I told one of my teachers that I plan on going into the Hadith college. He immediately just stopped me. He said, "Don't do what people tell you to do." And he said, "Just pray about it and go where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, steers your heart to." And so that's why I went to Kulliyat al-Dawah. If I could go back and tell myself to do things again, I might tell myself to go to Sharia college instead. But if I went to Sharia college, then I probably wouldn't have gone to Malaysia, and I probably wouldn't have experienced what I experienced there, and be able to, learn about the Sharia in a completely different way. And so, alhamdulillah, things turned out for the best, alhamdulillah. But, pray about it, and also to shadow other imams. And, when starting out, shadow someone else, and think about one thing about the imam position is that there are anyone who's looking to become an imam, they will look at the job description of a lot of different masajid, and you would think that it's a cookie cutter job description, copy and paste from every single one. But there are subtle differences, and those differences matter a lot. And that's where you have to really look hard with a critical lens, and you will see that, while most of them, they read the exact same, in the details you will see, whether or not they want a half of the Quran. That's important. If it says hafidh required or hafidh recommended, those two words, there's a huge difference between them, because being a hafidh is its own separate career pathway, pretty much. And so that's one thing. Also, based on the size of the community, certain teaching responsibilities, teaching obligations, or certain involvement with things here or there, whether it's outreach or whether it's Sunday school, whether it's teaching converse, whether it's teaching Arabic, this, that, the other. If the community already has someone who's doing that, then you won't see that on the job description. And if that's what you want to be able to bring to a masjid, you say, this is my toolbox. These are the things I'm good at. I may not be a hafiz of the Quran, for example, or I may not be good with kids, for example, but I'm maybe I'm an uber qualified scholar or whatever, or this or that or the other. So then you can look and see the difference between one job description and another, and see what this masjid's weakness is that they are trying to fill. So some masajid, they said, for example, they say, well, we've been focusing so much on outreach, we want someone that does inreach, or we've been, or this or that, or we lack someone who's good at outreach, so we want someone who's good at that. And or when you look at those finer details, you will see and recognize what kind of imam that they want to actually be the right puzzle piece that they are missing in their community. And so, if you're, because a lot of folks, they believe or they have the idea that they are expected to be everything to everyone in a community. And while that expectation exists, alhamdulillah, a lot of communities, a lot of masjid boards, they realize now that is very unrealistic and cruel and unusual punishment. And so, for example, I have 2 days off a week. I stipulate that, and there are other things that that I'm very where there's some flexibility that is allowed for imams. And so what a person needs as an individual, because there are many people who would be qualified to be an imam or to be a religious director and to help a community in a certain way, but they are afraid that it will just completely and entirely overburden them, just as it overburdened a lot of people in the 90s, for example, and so they left the imamate entirely, and so we have this big mess of a dozen masjids in a city and only like 2 or 3 full-time imams, and 2 or 3 other imams that are just completely and totally unqualified, almost done. And so this is, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully this presentation and future ones can be of help to individuals who are considering becoming an imam, whether they are studying Islam currently or considering studying Islam, or have studied Islam and are thinking, well, maybe being in IT wasn't all it was cooked up to be, and maybe I should consider putting my Islamic studies degree into better use and benefit the community and rack up some good deeds, inshallah ta'ala. So whatever I've said of right is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever I've said of wrong is from my sinful self and shaitan. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.